Hey guys, and welcome to what I think is the third episode of Chit Tuesday. Today, we are going to be talking about a certain topic that might seem kind of different based on if you've watched my previous videos on this segment or not. And that's because it's not specifically related to communication as like the main topic. But nonetheless, I think it's a topic that's very interesting, and I reckon most of you, or at least a few of you, might actually enjoy hearing this. So, without further ado, today's topic is actually about time. Time as a tool, as something we use in our day-to-day life, but also time as an abstract concept. And to be more specific, this video is actually based on my opinion on our perception of time. That's why I called, or I actually named this video, Time is Fickleness. I think that's what it's going to be named. So, without further ado, I have like a list of things that I want to talk about here on my right side. And the first thing I think is the most important thing to like lay down is how we measure time in our current day. Because of course, time being something that's been around in our knowledge for so many years, the way that we measure time is very different, or somewhat different compared to how they measure times thousands of years ago. So, we all know that, for example, we have years, months, days, weeks to define a certain period of time. And we also have these smaller structures such as hours, minutes, seconds. And I reckon most of you must know that 1 year is defined by our Earth completing a full orbit around the sun. And based on that, we also step down a notch to 1 month based on the moon's orbit around the Earth, meaning it completes the moon cycle. And I'm not sure I know there's like a whole lot of steps to the moon cycle, but there are like 4 main steps in the moon cycle, and that's how we determine weeks. So if a month is a full moon cycle, then each week is one of its phases. And this is where it starts getting a bit trickier. For example, why do we count a minute being 60 seconds, for example? And why do we count an hour being 60 minutes? That's based on what I've been able to research, that's basically due to how the Babylonians measured their time. If I'm correct, they used the sun and the sun's shadow specifically over a circle template on the ground. So they could divide the circle into 2 halves, one which was lit and the other half wasn't lit. And each of these halves, they divided into 12 sections, which would mean 12 sections for the lit side and 12 sections for the darkened side. And if you sum both of them, it's 24, and that makes the 24 hours of a single day that we use in present time. The reason why they used 12, I'm not completely sure, based on what I was able to investigate, is because the Babylonians attributed mystical significance to multiples of 12, which was actually kind of weird for me, because I don't know why specifically to multiples of 12, and they even emphasized the number 60, so 12 times 5. And this last piece of detail is what gives us the example of, for example, why a minute has 60 seconds, or why an hour has 60 minutes. So to think that our current measurement of time, even though it's a bit different because of course we use We use calendars that are specifically adapted to our society's needs. We use watches that, of course, they had watches back then, but not the type of watches you guys know from nowadays. But to think that we still use, for example, this mystical significance of number 12 to measure our own time, it's kind of weird though. I mean, I don't have anything to go against it, so I won't. But it does come out a bit weird. I'm not gonna lie. So, basically, that was like a really fast flash of how we measure time nowadays, just in case you didn't know any of those details. It's not the main thing of this video. I just wanted to mention it because it seemed like it could be an important detail, and I really didn't want to leave it aside, you know? So, the more important thing I wanted to talk about this video is time as an abstract concept. So, not necessarily how we measure time, but time itself as an idea, as a concept. And I wanted to start talking about this by mentioning an example, actually. So, you know, for example, when you're watching TV and you're lowering or upping, I don't know if that's a word, or increasing, yeah, let's say increasing the volume of whatever show you're watching. I don't know if everybody does this. I'm almost positive not everyone does this because that would be way too weird. But if you do, if you feel uncomfortable when, for example, you leave the volume on, I don't know, an uneven number, like, I don't know, 33, for example, and you really have to leave it at 32 or 30, 34, or a multiple of 5, that is actually very arbitrary because there's no genuine reason for you to feel a certain way towards uneven or even numbers. And I know this is something that actually happens to quite a lot of people. I won't say everyone because that would be totally stupid of me to say, actually. But I've met a lot of people who actually feel that way towards numbers. And this is just an example, you know, because I think a lot of people watch TV, so it's kind of more of a mundane example. But we attribute, what I want to get with this example is that we attribute a significance, an emotional significance, one might say, to these specific numbers, you know? And there really isn't a reason for us to do that. We just kind of do it because, I guess because we're humans and we're so complex. I truly don't have an answer to why we attribute significance to things that don't have this significance and this nature. Because normally a number would just be a number, an indicator, you know? Like the volume is at, I guess, 33%. But considering that we don't like it, that's truly weird. And how does this specifically relate to time? Well, one thing, because we use numbers to tell time. Even though we use things like months, days, years, and weeks, inside those months, days, years, and weeks, we use numbers to specify. For example, a year is like 365 days, a week has 7 days, a month can have anywhere between 28 to 31 days. So the fact that we use numbers to specify time, our measurement of time, it means that there exists the possibility for our perception of time to be induced or modified based on the significance that we give certain numbers. So I'm going to give another example that's also kind of mundane. Let's say you're microwaving your food for a minute, and that minute passes differently. Well, it doesn't pass differently. Our perception of that minute passing is different based on if we're really hungry and we're just sitting there or standing there waiting for the food to be ready. Or if we're just chilling and let's say you put the food into the microwave and then just go to the bathroom, to wash your hands or something, or you go to your room to check social media for the minute. That minute normally would pass slower, or I should say our perception of that minute passing would be much slower if it's compared to no, sorry. That minute would pass way faster in comparison to if we were just standing there waiting for the food with our tummy rumbling and we're really hungry. Why is that? Well, same as the volume thing, it's because we attribute this significance to a number. Or in this case, I wouldn't say it's specifically to a number, but we attribute significance to the perception of a time frame. And of course, this significance isn't like I'm going to perceive every single minute the same way. It's always based on what we're doing during that minute, or what we're waiting for, or if we are even paying attention to the minute passing. Because, for example, if you're watching a video like this video right now, and maybe you didn't even recognize that, I don't know, let's say 3 or 5 minutes have already passed. And the minutes, they just kind of pass, You aren't actually paying attention to each single minute that's passing. So, this regarding time as an abstract idea, as a concept in general, is very interesting because if we attribute time or the perception of time with a certain significance, then that means that time isn't, or the perception of time isn't as rigid as just simple numbers or simple indicators. It's way more complex than that. And I'm pretty sure that most of you haven't actually sat down, either with someone or by yourself, to just chat about how we perceive time. Sorry. So maybe some of you have. I reckon, me personally, I think I have. Maybe with a friend or by myself. And that's actually interesting when you sit down. I think I've repeated this in other videos, but of course with other topics. But when you sit down with someone or by yourself and you talk about something that normally would seem extremely natural, like normally our perception of time is extremely natural because it's part of our mundane lives. We do it, or we use it actually every moment of our life. There's no escaping how society measures time. But what is conditioned actually by us is our perception of time. Because as I put in examples, we don't always perceive time the same way as others do. Or sometimes we don't even perceive time the same way that we perceived it before. For example, as I said in the microwave, maybe one day you're microwaving your food for a minute and it lasts an eternity. And maybe the next day you're microwaving the same food, the same microwave, and literally you close your eyes and the food's ready. It's kind of weird how humans just do that with their perception of basically anything. It's not only time. But I'm talking about time because this topic just kind of popped into my head earlier this week, and I decided to talk about it. Also, if you're interested in reading about this, I'm also posting about the same topic on my blog. I'm going to mention that at the end of this video later. So, of course, time is useful. As I said, we can't escape our measurement of time. We use it in our everyday life cycle. When we say, yeah, mom, I'm going down in like 5 minutes, or you talk to a friend and you say, sure, I'll be there in 10. Or to your boss, when you say, sure, I'll have that work finished for tomorrow. you're never going to escape our measurement of time, because our measurement of time was actually created to make it easier for people to co-live in a society, to work together. That's basically why we use time. But of course, as I said, time isn't always a precise thing, because our perception differs, and I can't stress this enough. What I mean by this is, for example, when you told your mom you're going down in 5 minutes, or when you told your friend that you'd be there in 10 minutes. Most of the time, it isn't exactly 5 minutes, or it isn't exactly 10 minutes. Sometimes things will happen in the middle, and maybe you end up being there earlier, maybe you end up being there a bit later. And that's because we don't always use time measurements as an exact indicator. We use it more or less based on our perception and our common sense. So, for example, if there's a culture where punctuality is actually extremely important, and you tell another person that you'll be meeting them in said place in 30 minutes, and you're not there in 30 minutes, well, that's kind of your fault to leave them waiting. Because based on their perception of time, 30 minutes will be 30 minutes, no more nor less. But say, for example, a different culture where you say 30 minutes, but the other person already presumes you're going to be a bit later, or maybe the other person presumes you're going to be a bit earlier, and you're not according with that because you're from a different culture. Well, that's when perception of time gets kind of, I'm not going to say in the way of your activities, but it has a different impact than on your day-to-day life. And that's why perception, or the significance we give to time, is so special. Because it's not always only us that gives it that significance. More or less, quite a few people will probably attribute the same significance to a certain perception of time. And now, as a quick closure, what I wanted to say is actually propose a different way of, I wouldn't say a different way of perceiving time, and I would never try to overwrite our perception or our measurement of time as a society, because we're so used to it, and normally it would be so efficient that I currently do not see the point of overriding our whole perception of time. I think it would be way more complex to override it than to just adapt to it. But that doesn't mean that in the future maybe we perceive time in a different way, or we measure it in a different way. But leaving that to aside, what I actually wanted to propose as a closure, as I said, is there are certain moments, and moments is the key word in this closure, where you don't necessarily have to think about time as time. You know, we normally say that time is the way that we can perceive a present, a past, and a future, because we have a specific succession of events that are mashed up together into, well, a specific succession, you know, a specific order, a specific pattern. And of course, that makes things simpler, as we've stated in this video. But at the same time, there are moments where you can just value the moment independently. Normally, time is about seeing the whole picture, because you're taking into account multiple events just to measure that time frame, you know? But when it comes to moments, and let's say you're just lying on the grass, for example. How about you just simply lie on the grass? I reckon most of you, if you've ever lied on the grass, or I don't know, lied on your bed, or laid, sorry. Have you ever laid on grass or on your bed, or I don't know, or done something that causes pleasure to yourself? I don't think most of the time people actually value that moment for what it is. I think normally they would be thinking about time And I'm referring to, for example, thinking about something that happened in your past or something you need to do in your future. And of course, that's wonderful and all. I myself really like, for example, planning stuff out. But I I truly think that valuing a specific moment as an individual act is one of the most wonderful and beautiful things you can do in this world. And I hope this closure doesn't seem off topic, but valuing a moment for what it is and actually experiencing the moment, I think that you should try it out if you haven't. And with that, I give closure to this video. From this point on, if you want, you can click off. I am going to be announcing a few things related to, YouTube stuff and all that. If you enjoyed this video, or if you enjoy some of my other content, you're free to subscribe. Button down below. You guys should probably be familiar with that stuff. If you have any suggestions for topics, leave them in the description. Leave them in the comments below. You can also visit my social media and DM me there. The links will be in the description. You can join my Discord server and message me there if you have any suggestions, if you have any doubts, if you have any comments, whatever you want to say, you can just say it, And as I mentioned, I think around midway through this video, I write a blog, but I only do it for fun because I don't know. I wanted a place to be able to write and have it recorded, but I also wanted people to have the opportunity to read that if they ever so pleased. So that's why I started writing the blog. And normally I write about the topics that I talk about during Chit Chat Tuesday. So if you guys are ever going to recommend me a topic to talk about, then it's probably going to go in a written fashion to the blog as well. And as I always say, in the description below, all the links you will ever need regarding my channel, regarding my blog, social media, Discord channel, whatever. And with this, I give full closure to the video. I hope you guys enjoy this little segment. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I really thank you for your support. Love you all, guys, and love you all. Yeah, basically that. Thank you. Bye.